Hello, I'm Jose with FrSky North America. In today's video, we're going to go over assigning sound files to switches, sliders, and knobs. Assigning to switches is pretty easy, but assigning to knobs make it a little bit more complex depending on what you want to do. First, I'll give you a demo of the different ways to activate the sound files. After that, we will set it up from start to finish so you can do it too. Okay, I have a demo model set up with different sound triggers. First up is my rates, which I usually set to this switch over here, this 3-position switch. So I have my
medium rate, high rate, medium rate, low rate
switches set up for that sound trigger. Next, I like to use a slider for my flaps. So on this one, I have
flaps up, flaps half, flaps down.
And those callouts only happen when I get near that position.
Flaps up.
The next thing that you can do with audio is value callouts. When I press this button over here, I can play the value of anything that you want. In this particular case, I have it tell me the position of this slider.
100%. 58%.
But you can have it call out your battery voltage, RSSI and VFR information, etc. using the same methods. Next, many people use this knob over here to adjust the gain under stabilizer. When I turn this knob, it'll tell me what value I land at. So I can go ahead and turn it to here.
88%. 79%.
And I can turn it slowly, doesn't really matter.
67%.
And when I stop, it'll tell me that value. Okay, so the next example I have is on this slider over here. Generally, I use this slider on my models for brakes. So what I want, I don't really need the brake amount. I can feel that with the slider, but what I want is to tell me when my brakes are on. So as soon as I move past a certain point, it starts telling me the brakes is on, and it'll continue to tell me every 4 seconds that the brakes are on until I switch it back. The next example I have is sequences. Pattern guys usually have a routine, and when they practice, they want to have a call out for the next item. And I have it set up over here on this momentary switch in the back. I personally don't have any pattern specific sound effects, so bear with me and the sounds that it produces.
3D. Bounce away. Fly it like you stole it. Landing.
And then once you're at the end of your sequence, it'll repeat back again.
3D. Bounce away. Fly it like you stole it.
So that's what I have in this video. Next thing we're going to do is go through each of these examples and show you how to set it up. Feel free to skip to the section that you need. I broke down this video into chapters, so that should be easy for you. Okay, I have a brand new model here that I just created. And we're going to go ahead and go through the examples. The first one is a switch position controlling sounds. So like in the example, this is my rate switch, and I'll have high, medium, and low. And let's go ahead and set that up. So I'm going to go over here in a model, and I'm going to go over to special functions, which is on the second page right there. And if you notice over here, these 2 special functions that appeared here, those are globals. So in other words, those will appear on all my models, and you can set special functions up to be global or not. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click over here and go to add. So I'm going to add a new special function. The action that I want is play audio. State enable. So I want to enable it so it happens. Now the active condition is essentially the switch that you want to trigger the sound effect with. So I'm going to go ahead and click there, and then I'll go ahead and flip the switch to the top over there. And let's make that one high rate over there. So then I can come over here, and at the bottom, see where it says sequence? I add a new line in the sequence. The type is play file, and the file that I want over here is whatever a file that I have. Now, I may have more sounds than you if you just have the default sound effects. There are people who create sound effects. I create my own, and maybe I'll make a video on how I do that. But you can get sounds from, like, I think the very popular one right now is the Amber sound pack. That one's pretty good. That has a lot of different sounds in it. So if what we have in the library that's default in the radio is not enough, you could probably download more if you want. All right, so let's go over here and go to my rate. So this is my rate over here. So I got with aileron, with rudder, but I also got over here just rate high, low, and medium. So let's make this one high over there. And that's it. So now if I flip the switch,
High rate.
clicks it on.
High rate.
So every time I hit the switch,
High rate.
high rate. Okay, so a couple of other options that you have in the menu. Number one is this one, which I love. It's called skip on startup. So regardless of whether or not this is triggered when you first turn on your radio or first go to this model file, if you hit this, it will not say that, because then it would say every switch position that you have, and it would get a little bit annoying. The other option you have over here is global. If you turn global on, then this sound file with that switch assignment and the sound that's attached to it will work for all your models. So if you have the same switch position on all your planes for certain things, like say throttle cut or rates or flaps or whatever, you can go ahead and make it a global so that it will happen on all your models. For this particular case, I'm not going to turn on the global, but that is an option for you. Okay, so there's my high rate.
High rate.
Let's go ahead and set up medium rate, which is the mid switch position. And since I set it up, so I had a couple of options, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to do the next switch just by hitting on that one and cloning it. So I just cloned that switch, or that special function. So I just cloned that special function. So now all I have to do is edit it. So the next thing I'm going to do is just go to active condition.
High rate.
And move it to where I want, which is the middle position over there. And then now I can go ahead and change this, edit it, to rate medium.
High rate. Medium rate.
There it is. Done. I'll return to get out of it. And then I'll go over here, clone this one.
Medium rate.
And do the same thing. I'll edit it, change the switch position, play file, edit that, and change this one to low rate. And there you go. So now I have
medium rate, high rate, low rate.
Okay.
Medium rate, high
And that's
rate.
it. That's how you assign a sound to a switch. Very, very simple. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is show you how to set up a half flap, full flap, and a flaps up on a slider. So a slider is interesting because you need to tell it. So I want it so that when I go to the up position, that it tells me flaps up, but only when I get near that up position. And then once I go to the middle position, I want it to tell me flaps half. And when I get to the bottom position, I want it to tell me flaps down. This is interesting because you can't just assign a slider to trigger a sound effect. It needs to know, well, what do you want? You want it in a certain position or where, like a range of positions or whatever. So you need to tell it that. And so the way that we do that is with logical switches. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to hit return. Out of the special functions, I'm going to go over one to logic switches. Go over here, and I'm going to add a new logic switch. So you think of a logic switch as essentially a switch, but instead of, like right now, the parameter for the switch is by flipping it to that position, and that's how it knows that you want a certain action. A logical switch is based on certain things. So this one is just in the middle position, and the logic switch that we want in the function determines how the switch behaves. So if you look first of all up here, and you see LS1 and it's green. So the status of it is that color. So if it's green, that means that particular logic switch is on right now. And if it's red, that means that switch is off, sort of like flipping the switch on or off. So over here, right now, it is set to A is around X, and that's what that mark means, is around X. And that's A is rudder is at 0. So in other words, if I move that rudder over, then the switch turns off. So that's essentially a logic switch, and you have a different types of logic switch. So what we want is positional information. So we want the slider position when it's near the top is when I turn on that logic switch. So the logic switch that I want is A is greater than X, which is this one. And the source is the slider. So there it is. Once I move the slider, it says slider left. That's correct. And the value that I want is near that up position. So I want it to be somewhere where it sort of like, has a little bit of play. So what I'll do is I'll put it to about 70%. I think is pretty decent. So I have a little bit of play in the switch before it turns off. And that's usually enough. But what I like to do is I like to add a delay before active and a delay before inactive. So in other words, this switch will not trigger unless it's past 70% for a certain amount of time. And I like to do just 1 or 0.1 or 0.2 seconds. And what this does is you got to remember that these side switches and these switches over here, they're just analog switches that do have a little bit of play. So you want to give them, a little bit of a delay before active and a delay before inactive to sort of like dampen that out a little bit. So there you go. So this switch, this hits when I am near the top. So this switch, let's go ahead and call this one FLP up. So flap up. And this switch is done. I'm going to go ahead and create a flaps down one. And the flaps down one is almost the same, so might as well clone it. Still using slider left. So now I'm just going to go ahead, after I cloned it, I'm just going to go ahead and edit it. So over here, the function that I want, because up here is positive 100, the middle position is 0, and the bottom, or when you flip the slider all the way the other way, it's minus 100. And so what you want is near the minus 100 point is where you want it. So what I want to do is instead of an A is greater than X, I want to do an A is less than X because we're dealing with negative numbers. And then I'm going to go over here and change this to minus 70. Let's change the name. And I'll use the shortcuts over here to do it. So I'm going to scroll over to that U over there, hit the center to delete, and then I'll add down. So space down. So let's check our logic switch. I'm all the way over at the bottom. The light is green. And then when I go past a certain point, then it turns red. Perfect. So I created those two. I got the flaps up and the flaps down. Now I need a flaps half. So the flaps half is essentially at the 0 position. So I'm going to go ahead and click over there, add a new logic switch. And let's call this one FLP HLF. So there's my flaps half switch. Now the function that I want this time is going to be, you can do equals, and that would equal 0. But if there's any play, then it may not be that accurate. So what I like to do is for the flaps middle position, I like using a range. So range means from this point to this point, then activate that logic switch. So then over here at source, let's choose slider left. There it is. And then from 0, so remember going this direction, going near flaps up, is a positive number, and then going this direction is a negative number. So why don't we do the range minus 10 to positive 10? And that gives us a little bit of leeway, same thing over there. And then same thing down here, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of delay before active and a delay before inactive. Not too much, let's do 2.2 seconds. And that just gives us a little bit of leeway. All right, so now on this page, I can actually see what logic switch is triggered right now. So if I move this up, the flaps up triggers, going near the half point, the half triggers, and then when I go to the down triggers. Now, if you are a little OCD and you programmed it along with me, you might want the flaps half position to be in this list in the middle. So we could do that. just go ahead and click on it and go move. And now you can move it to the middle position. There you go. All right, so that's done. Now we can go into special functions and we can create those sound effects. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add a new sound effect. And action is going to be play audio, enable it. And then over here, active condition, instead of using a switch, I'm going to use those logic switches. I'm going to go back because I don't want to do this too quickly. So I'll go over here and click there. And then in here, you can click in here, and then now you can choose logic switches. And then over here, I'm going to choose whichever one I want to work with. So let's say flaps up. So I'm going to choose the flaps up logic switch. So that will be the trigger for this special function. Now I can go down here, add a new line in sequence, play file, and the file that I want to play would be flaps up.
Flaps up.
There it goes.
Flaps up.
I'm going to return out of that menu to the previous menu. Here we go. And I'll do the same thing, and I'll do a skip on startup so it does not play that sound effect in the beginning when I first turn on the model or change to it.
Flaps up.
Okay, I'm going to return out of that back to the special functions menu. So over here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to clone it. So I'm going to click in the center over there and go down here to clone and hit the center button. So I just duplicated the file, and then I'll go with that new one that got cloned. I'll edit it and make the flaps half version. So the active condition is going to be flaps half, return to get out of it, and I can go to the bottom, edit that, and change the sound file to be the flaps half sound file. And I believe that's up here. So let's check it. I'm in the up position.
Flaps half.
There it goes. And now let's make the flaps down sound
Flaps
effect.
half.
So I'm going to go over here, click on the flaps half, clone it.
Flaps half.
It makes it again at the bottom. And then I can click in the center, edit it. And then same thing, active condition. I'll change it to the flaps down logical switch. And I can go down to the bottom, edit it, and change this one to flaps down sound file as well.
Flaps down.
Flaps
Flaps
up half and flaps
Flaps up.
up. There you go.
Flaps half. Flaps down.
Okay, the next thing that you can do with audio is value callouts. When I press this button over here, I want it to tell me the value of something. So in this case, I'll make it the value of this knob over here, which is actually right now set as my brightness knob. And what you can do is you can have it call out, say, your battery voltage and telemetry, or say RSSI and VFR information and telemetry. Or if you have a GPS sensor, then your speed or your maximum speed, you can have it called out. So we're going to go through the process right now. I'm going to go ahead and click in special functions. Let's just get out of this and start from the beginning. Okay, so it's in the model. Go over here to special functions, and in the special functions menu over here, click anywhere in there and add a new special function. Action. So what do you want to do? I want to play audio. And I want to enable it. Make sure to do that. And the active condition is when I press this button. Okay, so first of all, these buttons are your function switches. You can have it another button or anything else that you want. But what you need to do is you need to make this function switches into momentary switches for this kind of action. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it over here. And there it is, function switch 4. But if you hadn't in the past created these as momentary switches, you'll need to do that first. So let's actually do that first. I kind of forgot about that. I'm going to go ahead and return. And I'm going to get out of this menu and go back to the model menu. Just scroll over to the first page to edit model. Down here, look for function switches. And right now, notice it says momentary. I think it's normally set to 6 position switch. Let's switch it there really quick. And what that does, it makes these switches into one big 6 position switch. But you can change this, and this is changed per model because notice it was in the edit model area. So every model can have different assignments for these function switches. But the mode that I like to use it for is momentary. So once it's in momentary mode, these are individual momentary switches. So now this is an individual switch. Now let's go back to special functions. Go to that last one over there, edit it. And there it is, still set to function switch 4, which is right. And over here in sequence now, I'm going to go ahead and add new sequence. And now, instead of play file like I did in the previous examples, I'm going to go over here and play value. Now, source. Source is the value that you want to play. So if I click that, and I come over here, now I can go over here. Now, if my receiver was hooked up and that receiver had telemetry information, telemetry would appear here. But right now, there's no telemetry because the radio is not on or the receiver is not on. So in this case, I'm just going to do a knob. So that pot now is what the value that it will play.
Minus 46%. Minus 66%. Minus 58%.
And that's it. It's very simple. You can have it play the value of your telemetry, like your battery voltage value or whatever. So you're in flight, you can press that button, and now it can play your telemetry values. Okay, so the next one that we're going to do is for the gain adjust knob for stabilizers, and I have this one set up for that. And what I'd like it to do is it'll sense that there's a difference in the value, so that, in other words, I move the pot, and then once I stop moving it, I want it to report the value. So we're going to do that with a logical switch. We're just going to do it with a different type of logical switch. So now I'm going to go into Model, go over to Logic Switches, and anywhere in here, let's create a new logical switch. So I'm going to go over here to Add, and let's name it Gain Adjust Switch. Sure. Now, the function that we want, so I'm going to go over here to Function, and the one that I want is here, the triangle. So that means, triangle means essentially delta or difference. So when it senses a difference greater than x, and x is a certain value, say like a few percentage points, then it'll trigger the logical switch and it'll turn the logical switch on. This one over here and this are pretty much the same, except this one, it's negative or positive value, whereas this one is only positive. So this is negative or positive. So we'll just go ahead and use this one. And then the source that I want is going to be this pot. There it is, pot 1. Now, if you take a look now, because we've got a difference is greater than x, and x being 0, and that pot or that logical switch is now turning off and on really quick because it's noticing a very, very slight change. So let's just crank this up just a little bit. I'm going to say 3%, and look at that, it stopped moving. So now it's off. It's not noticing a difference in that pot. So now if I move the pot, it turns on. See that? And then it turns off once it stops noticing the movement or the change of at least 3%. Now, the problem is if I move very slowly, take a look at that, it cycles on and off. In other words, it'll just turn on that switch on and off over and over and over again. So what I need to do is I need to add some sort of delay so that it doesn't do that anymore. I'm going to come over here to delay before inactive, and I'll add some in there. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to turn it very slowly. So I'll add about a second. I think a second works actually pretty good. So now, if I turn the pot, it stays solid. And if I turn very, very slowly, it still stays solid. So then I release it, and then it turns. So this is it. So essentially what I created was a logical switch that sensed a change and then turns on and then turns off again after the change is done. All right, so I think this is complete. Let's go ahead and get out of this. So I'm returning out and get back out to the model menu. Now I can go into special functions, and now I can create the sound effect or the sound file that I want. So anywhere in the list, go ahead and click enter and then add. So what do I want to do? I want to play audio. Okay, let's go ahead and enable it. And the active condition is going to be that logical switch that we created. So I'm going to go over here, go over to logic switch, and then go to the gain adjust switch. There it is. So now, if you take a look, now same thing as the logical switch, look for the red to turn green. So it's going to turn on. In other words, it'll trigger this special function as soon as I move the switch. See that? So what I actually wanted to do is I want to trigger as soon as I release the switch where it turns off right now. So why don't we just invert this? So I'm going to go over here to the gain adjust and hit and hold. And then now I've got an option for invert. So now we're going to sense when that switch turns off. So if I come over here, move, boom, there it goes. So now this is operating backwards from the logical switch. Okay, so let's give this a shot. I'm going to go over here to sequence, and instead of play a file, I want to play the value of that pot. So actually, no, not the pot, and I'll explain why. So let's go over here, play file, play value. So if I play the value of this pot, then this pot goes from minus 100 to positive 100. But we did limit it with a curve for stabilizer to go from 0 to 100. So I don't want to play the value of the pot. I want to play a value of the channel. So I'm going to go over here, click there, and go to channels. And I believe that's channel 13. There it is, gain adjust. %, 65%, 90%. And by the way, if you don't want it to say the percentage, you can turn the unit off. 50, 23, 90. And that works. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it off for now. And then also, if you wanted to, so let's just say you have a sound, which I don't have, but a sound that says gain adjust. You can put that sound in a sequence. So what you do is you add a new line in sequence, play file, and I don't think I have anything like that, but let's use, I like that, fly it like you stole it. So the only thing you have to do now is, since I created it afterwards, I just need to move that before it. So if that actually said gain adjust, and then it would say the number, gain adjust 75%, you want this above it. So I'm going to go ahead and move, and just move it up there. There it goes. Let's move the pot.
Fly it like you stole it. 47.
That's how you do that. All right, so the next example that I'm going to do is going to be for this slider over here. And I like to use this slider for breaks. So I don't necessarily need to know half and full, like, I pretty much know what it is by the position of the slider. But what I do need to know is if brakes are on. So if the plane's sitting there and I left the brakes on, I want a warning to tell me that the brakes are on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a warning where once it gets past a certain point, say that much, then it'll tell me brakes are on, and then I want it to repeat that every few seconds so it gets annoying and I reach up and turn the brakes off. So let's go ahead and build that. So first thing I need is a logical switch. So I need to identify that position that I wanted to start talking at. So I'm going to go over here to logical switch, and I'm going to go ahead anywhere in this menu, hit enter, and add. And let's call this one brakes switch. There it goes. And the function that I want is A, so I believe that all the way up is 100. And then over here is, what number, let's say 80. And then if I go below that, that's when I want to trigger anywhere around there. So I want an A, which is slider, is less than, which is this one, whatever value I decide. So the source, again, is going to be the slider. Enter. The value, let's say, I guess 80 would be good. Oh, I'm going the wrong direction. So I want positive 80. There it goes. And there it goes. You see the red turn to green once I get past that certain point. And that's it. For anything to do with sliders or knobs, these are analog pots. And so they have a little bit of shake, a little bit of dither. So what I'd like to do is I'd always create just a bit of a delay before active and a delay before inactive. So I'm just going to put 2 seconds in there, and that'll just sort of dampen it out a little bit, and it won't shake if you get really close to that number. There it goes. And that's it for my logical switch. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put it into a special function. So I'm in special function, I hit enter, and then I hit add. And let's enable it. Active condition will be that logical switch. And it's going to be the brake switch. There it goes. And oops, my fault. This should be play audio. Okay, so enable it. Brake switch. Voice 1, default, skip on startup if you want, and add a new line in sequence. Play file, and the file that I want to play, the file I want to play for this one is brakes on. And again, this is my own custom sound file. If you don't have one, I believe Amber Sound Pack has it, and in a future video I can show you how to create your own sound files too.
Brakes on.
There you go. So now it tells me the brakes are on, but it only tells me once. But I want to go ahead and repeat it. So over here we've got a column called repeat. I'm going to change that from once to every 8 seconds. So now while that is active, so I'm past that point, it'll repeat every 8 seconds. There it goes. So I can go ahead and turn it off. So that gives me a nice little warning if I'm at the pits and I'm working on my plane. Oh crap, I left my brakes on. All right, moving on. So this one is done. All right, so for my next trick, we're going to look at sequences, so sound sequences. So a lot of pattern guys, when they practice, they want to be able to practice by themselves and be able to do the next call out for the next maneuver that they need to do. By pressing a switch. So yeah, we can do that. So let's go ahead and set that up. Now that one does not involve any logical switches. It's just all in the special functions. So I'm going to go ahead and hit model, and I'm going to go over to special functions over there, enter. Let's create a new special function, add, and we want to do another play audio. Let's enable it. active condition this time is going to be a momentary switch. So I'm going to use the switch in the back over here. Anytime that you deal with momentary switches, it needs to be in the position that you want it to be in. So this position, which is SH, you can see arrow down, is different than this position, which is SH arrow up. So what I want is arrow down. By holding it down, and then you can either get out of the menu by hitting here, or you can hit the return button. So make sure that you're holding the switch up, or if it's one of the back switches, make sure that you're holding it up while you exit that menu. And you can see that it says SH down. All right, so now we can move forward, and then I can go over here and add a new line in sequence. And we play a file, so let's say this is our first maneuver. It's 3D, sure. And we can get out of that. So you hit the button,
3D.
It says 3D. You hit the button again,
3D.
3D. So what we want to do then is we want to add a new line in sequence, and this time we want a wait condition. And what this will do is it'll wait a certain, or this will wait until you hit a certain button again. And once you hit that certain button, then it continues and plays whatever the next thing is in the list. So then, whoops, I go down here, hit the button, and I'll do the same button I used to start it. So say that one, again, holding down, and then hit return. So now I've got 3D and then wait condition. So all I need to do is just add another file in this list. So let's go ahead and add a new line in sequence. Play file is correct. File is the next one, say bombs away.
3D.
And then I hit the button again.
Bombs away.
There it goes. And of course, it'll just repeat.
3D.
If you hit it again,
Bombs away.
there it goes. All right, perfect. So now if I've got more to add, the best thing to do is just come over here, clone that wait condition so you don't have to rebuild it. And there it is. And add the next one, which is whatever file that you have. And of course, I don't have any pattern, sound effects because I don't fly pattern, but
3D. Bombs away. Butterfly off.
there you go. Let's add one more. So I'm going to add one, and let's play file door open. Sure, why not? Okay, so notice I didn't put a wait condition. So when I get to that,
3D. Bombs away. Butterfly off. Door open.
it'll just read it on the list. So if you need different things, like what I do is I have a generic on and off or open and close. And so if I wanted to, I can just put the two words together and, and add it if I need to. Or you can make sentences that way too. But now all I got to do is go over here to wait condition, clone it, and move it. So I just move it in between the two. So now for you pattern guys, let's say that you do your maneuvers.
3D. Bombs away. Butterfly off.
Okay, but you want to go back to the beginning again. How do you reset it? Well, funny you should say that. There's a reset button over here. So I just have to add a button to that reset. And I have these as set up as momentary switches. I can make one of them a reset. So let's go ahead and do that. And now I can choose that function switch. Now with function switches, if you have them set in momentary mode, you don't have to hold them down. Notice it doesn't have an up or down. It knows that it's just you want it on the on. Okay, so let's try this now. So we go
3D. Bombs away.
Now if I wanted to, I can reset by hitting this button
3D.
and then reset to beginning.
Bombs away. Butterfly off.
Reset.
3D.
There you go. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. If this video is useful for you, please give us a like and go ahead and comment if you want to, or you can send me an email if you have any questions at jose@FrSky-rc.com. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.